Next up is Tory Butterworth. Tory Butterworth, PhD, works in mental health during the week and uses writing to maintain her mental health on weekends. She is currently soliciting agents for her self-help book, Stop, I'm Eating My Feelings. She is also working on a psychological suspense novel that takes place in a corrupt mental hospital. Please welcome Tory Butterworth.
I'm going to read the beginning of my manuscript, Too Close to the Sun. Prologue. Andy didn't want to hold her new mother's hand on the way to school that morning. When her other mother used to take her hand, it didn't mean anything good. Most of the time, she'd get dragged to the back of the room and pushed inside, even if she kicked and screamed. Then the door would shut behind her, hard, and she would be locked in there for a long, long time, sometimes without anything to eat. But when the lady in the red dress took her to meet Mrs. Wheeler, she told her not to worry, that her old mother was gone and would never be back again, and that she would be living with the Wheelers, her new parents. Andy wouldn't be locked in any more back rooms, and she'd be going to school. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't know whether or not to believe the lady in the red dress. Still, Mrs. Wheeler, the woman who was going to be her mother, seemed nice enough. Andy didn't trust that, since she'd seen a lot of grown-ups be real nice to her and then turn around and be real mean, not so much later. But in the few days she had been with her, Mrs. Wheeler had been okay. And she smelled nice, not all funny like those grown-ups her old mom used to know. It was early morning, and it was already getting hot in that stuffy way that tells you it's almost summer. Andy's hand was all wet with sweat. Mom's hand, her new mom's hand, felt big and warm and safe and dry. Like she said, so far her new mom had been okay. So far. Chapter 1, 12 years later. Thomas, Tom. The commanding voice brought Thomas Melwood, PhD, out of his daze. He jerked slightly as he came back to morning rounds on deck, the emergency room and admissions unit for Pittsburgh Psychiatric Hospital. Psychiatric residents, nurses, and social workers crowded around the large white table in the center of the room. But it was the director of the deck himself, psychiatrist Jim Tanner, who was addressing him. Tom forced his eyelids upwards and looked across at Jim while reaching for the hazelnut latte sitting next to his right hand. Yes? Don't tell me you're getting too old for these all-nighters. A wave of laughter spread across the room. Tom willed his mind to focus as he took a slow sip of his drink. Stone cold. How many hours since he had his last break? To bring you up to date, Tom, again the slight ripple of laughter, we were wondering if you were seeing any patients these days for individual treatment. We thought Ms. Wheeler might benefit from your expertise in PTSD. Tom hoped his coffee cup hid the slight blush he felt spreading over his features. He wasn't used to being deferred to. As the only psychologist there, and a bit of a maverick to boot, the last director had done his best to ignore Tom's presence, much as Tom ignored the strange stains on the deck carpet. I'll check my wait list. Dr. Tanner winked at him. I'll ask you again when you're awake. At the end of rounds, Tom sat on, waiting for the room to clear. He started as a fresh-faced young woman, probably under 25, stared him straight in the eye. Hello, I'm Melissa Wojciechowski. I'm a social work student from Pitt. Melissa held out her hand to be shaken. Tom Melwood. How long would it take for Pittsburgh Psychiatric to crush that youthful idealism? Should he take bets from the nurses and social workers there? My supervisor is Jane Nelson, but Dr. Tanner said she's on vacation this week. Dr. Tanner said I could observe your interview with Andrea Wheeler. Tom must have looked blank because she added, the patient Dr. Tanner asked you to take on? Damn Dr. Tanner and his plan to force Tom to wake up this morning. Tom was having none of it. I'm sorry, I'm in a bit of a haze. It must be hard for you working nights. Some of us feel most alive when everyone else is in bed. Melissa merely stared at Tom with those big hazel eyes, seemingly growing wider by the minute. Where's our patient? Tom tried to modulate the crankiness in his tone to not totally destroy Melissa's illusions about him on the first day they met. Interview room 2. At least Melissa appeared to have a brain in her head and the retentive memory of her age. I've read a lot about PTSD in my psychopathology class. This will be a great opportunity to see how you work with her. Tom reluctantly admitted that a forgotten part in him began to stir, that part that liked to show off his expertise in front of someone who didn't know any better than to be impressed. Age after beauty, Tom pointed in the general direction of interview room 2.